giant pies on the credit card. I'm talking about next year's pie.
Okay.
2011, if you had your way.
Yes.
No, let's go to 2020. In 2020, after reduction of government size, where should the budget be? What's the ideal?
Okay. I would like to reduce by 25% our total budget by eliminating the departments that I just talked about. And I believe that it's possible to do that. I don't believe that it is anything that cannot happen by a logical transition from federal government to the states. We're talking about that right now in healthcare. And so I think our federal budget can be reduced by 25%.
So 1.5 trillion? Well, if the current budget is 2 trillion, and you're proposing an initial carve-off of 25%, that's still a budget of approximately $1.5 trillion.
Well, would you like me to say again, I think we need to reduce our budget by $14 trillion and get our debt gone? That's what, I mean, I'm a businesswoman. My husband and I own a company. We look at our budget every year and we say, okay, how much did we bring in? How much did we spend? If we spend more than we bring in, we go out of business.
Right.
If we don't reduce and get back to the amount where we are back in the black again.
But you're talking about the national debt.
That's
correct. The national debt.
What I was referring to was the federal budget as an annual prospect. Like this year, I believe it was something on the order of $2.5 trillion. Through the Bush years, it was, just off the top of my head, I'm going to say in the 400 to 800 billion range annually. And so, was that the correct size of government?
No, of course not.
Oh,
and we have to talk about the principles here. I think that the issue on the table in this campaign, as it has been through the 30 years that I've been involved in political activism, is that by limited government, we're talking about what's in the Constitution. Okay? And if you look at Article 1, Section 8, and this isn't anything new to me, you look at how the founders had it divvied up. They didn't believe that an income tax was even an appropriate tax. They thought that was an immoral sort of tax. How did they tax? They taxed by tariffs, imposts, and duties. They had a brilliant idea. And their idea was to have foreign nations raise the revenue for our nation. And we have such a bloated budget right now that nobody would be able to buy or trade if we went totally back to that system. But I think that's where we need to get back to again at some point. But I'm not answering this question yet, so I need to.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to. Actually, I do mean to get my question answered, because this is the one important thing.
Right. So here's in theory what I think we need to do.
So what should be in the budget? What's appropriate for the federal government?
Individual things that ought to be in the federal government are enumerated in Article 1, Section 8. And that's it.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't see any social programs there. I don't see 60% of our social entitlements there. And whatever those are, I am going to vote to sunset and to not reauthorize. And so I don't have the exact figures in front of me. And if I'd known that you wanted those exact figures...
Oh, no, I wasn't really driving towards anything other than a sort of a general
I think it's important that we talk about, in this campaign, the principles of what needs to happen. And if people ask questions about, say, the war in Afghanistan or in Iraq, and they want specifics, I don't even have all of the top secret information to even give you an educated decision on how we should be involved or how we should not. But I can speak on principle, what I think is right. So that's what I think.
Enumerated powers as how to divvy up the pie is a great answer. Thank you.
Well, that's all I can say at this point. And I do, and I have for a long time been supporting John Shadeg's bill in the House and Tom Coburn's bill in the Senate, which is the Enumerated Powers Act. In fact, I did a webinar on this many, many months ago. And I think that that's what we have to get in place. And what that bill would do is it would require every congressman, every senator to review what's on their desk in terms of its constitutional standing before it can even be entertained. And I think that is a wise way to go. But again, as far as that budget is concerned, we do have to have common sense about it. We don't want to throw ourselves into a worse economic position than we are in right now. But I will say, our fiscal policy is what is damaging us. And if you follow the money, you will follow the problem. For many years, I have felt that it would be very important for us to audit the Federal Reserve. Many Republicans have sat alongside me in this party and have rolled their eyes about such an idea because one man had his name on that. That one man got reelected by 80% of the vote since this last election in his district. He's no primary. Pardon me? His name is Ron Paul, and he has a lot of things right. Okay? Now, I didn't support him for president. I supported somebody else. But he has a lot of very fine principles that he has been standing up for many years, that I have agreed with him on. So, I noticed in the Central Committee meeting not long ago, some bill was brought forward, and it was about auditing the Federal Reserve. And I noticed a considerable number of Central Committee members rolling their eyes. And one of our Senate leaders challenged it. But then it was brought to light that 283 other congressmen are also sponsoring that bill. We have to ask ourselves, how long are we going to allow the policy of tax, spend, debt, and regulate to drag this nation down? And that was brought forward by a man named John Keynes. I will challenge any professor at BYU or anywhere else on this economic theory that it is sound, because it is bringing this nation down. And if I practiced Keynesian economics in my company, we would have been out of business long ago. That's what's happening to our nation. So that's a little bit about that budgeting process. We think that we can print money like Monopoly. You know, we might as well back it up with water. But I understand water has value in Utah.
Thank you.
So, okay, how I would divvy up that pie, we're doing just the opposite right now. We are defunding our defense, and we are funding the social issues. We have some people whose names are, and whose careers are on the line right now here in our state. ATK, Hill Air Force Base. These are real people. These are the limited and limited powers that Congress actually has. Defense. To provide for the common defense. So that's where I stand. Right? Yes.
So, we've never seen the sausage made quite like this year with the health care bill. The system seems broken. People, the senators' votes are being purchased. Powerful chairpersons are able to get more money for their state because of their position. How do we fix the system of passing laws in the federal government, and what will you do to help?
Well, that's a central focus of my campaign, and it's something that we have been very clear about from the very beginning, that this campaign would not be bought, sold, traded, or gambled away at the campaign level, that we be transparent, because if we're part of the corruption in a campaign, we can't possibly go back to Washington, D.C. and clean up the corruption. I think if you watch campaigns very closely, and if you know who's surrounding those different candidates, you find out very quickly who's already being bought. And let me just say a little bit more. I have solid conservatives around me, and I don't want it any other way. Some people say, so how are you going to reach across the aisle, you know? Well, here's what's been happening through my lifetime. Okay, conservatives have been reaching across the aisle, and they've been pulled across the aisle. It is really time for conservatives to reach across that aisle and start pulling in this direction. I think you have to have somebody who is knowledgeable on the issues, who has been in this fight for many years, who understands how Washington works.